Now that we know what the restrictions are and how to find them, we got to start finally solving some equations. But before I start solving equations, I want to look at a couple things. Remember algebra? Remember if you had something like 2x equals to 8, what do you have to do to solve it? Well, of course, you have to do the opposite. Divide each side by 2, right? You get x equals to 4. Even if you had something like x squared equals to 25, what do you do to solve it? Yeah, of course, the opposite. Square root, square root. So now you got x equals to 5, right? Well, here's another thing that we've got to do. Here's another thing we've got to do. What if it's already a square root? How do we solve this thing? Well, just like we did here, if this was squared, you'd square root it. Well, what if it's square root? Well, then you would square it. See what I mean? So let's square both sides. You do one side, you do to the other. And look what you end up having. This is the square of root 2x. So if you think about it, this is the same as saying root 2x times root 2x. Wait a second. I've seen this before. I know what to do. Root times a root gives you a, 2x times 2x, that's just plain old 2x. Look at that. The square of that gets rid of the root. This is 2x now equals to 16. We can easily solve this. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Guess what? X equals to 8. Oh my goodness. But don't forget the restriction. We have a restriction underneath this radical sign, which says 2x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So the restriction is, of course, divide by 2, x has to be greater than or equal to 0. There's the restriction that kind of goes along with this solution. And you ask yourself, is 8 actually greater than 0? It is. So then that means this is a good answer. Right? But if we had a situation where, let's say, you work this out and this works out to be, let's say, -8 like this, just hypothetically, okay? If that works out to be -8, guess what? Your restriction says you got to be bigger than 0. So that would mean this entire answer or this entire question has no solution. Isn't that cool? I love this stuff. So now let's start looking at this one. Woo! Okay, so instead of just going out and solving this blindly right away, let's go take a look at the restriction for this, all right? Let's look at the restriction. -8x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Divide each side by -8, but do you remember what happens when we divide by a negative? Yes, that flips. So all the x's in this case have to be less than 0. Why? Why? I know what you're thinking. Why? Well, easy, because if it's less than 0, that makes that x a negative, and a negative times a negative, guess what? Makes a positive, and guess what? You can square root it. That's why. I see. So let's go out and solve this now. Now that we know that this is the restriction, let's go out and solve it. So again, get rid of that squared by squaring both sides. Get rid of that square root, I should say, by squaring both sides. Okay, well, that's easy enough. Let's go. This gives you -8x. 4 squared is 16. Divide by -8. Divide by -8. You've got x equals to -2. Does this satisfy the restriction? Yes, x has to be less than 2. It satisfies. So we're going to get a little bit more complicated as we go, but that's a nice introduction.